Hi everyone. Today I'll be sharing with you a very interesting topic which is history of diabetes mellitus. Now we have advanced so much into the realm of diabetes that we are now having encroaching the domain where there we have bionic pancreas, right? We have wearable solution for to monitor blood glucose, we have wearable solution to deliver drug, right? But if we dig deeper into our timeline, we can find out from how it all started. Now please mind it, I am a very much enthusiast in digging up history of various medical disorders, but I am not a historian. So I have scavenged peer reviewed articles to pinpoint the various highlight and milestone which I felt was important, right? So if you feel during the course of this presentation that there are much more to it, then please feel free to get back to me in the comment section. You can type in the chat box, and definitely I will add to that in my future lectures. Anyway, so let's get on to it, right? The first mention of diabetes happened almost 3500 years back in 1552 CE. The Egyptian doctor named hesy-ra, and he was first to identify this kind of disease where a person had passing of too much urine. Okay, the disease was not named right then, but the symptom of polyuria, which we often assign to diabetes most commonly, was pointed out by him in the Ebers papyrus, right? He also suggested modification of diet as a treatment of this unknown disease. Well, India was not far behind. 2600 years back, during 600 BC, we all know the father of Indian surgery is also the father of diabetes. He, in his textbook Sushruta Samhita, named and identified and named this disease as Madhumeha. It literally translates honey in urine, or urine sweetened by honey. In fact, he also had the method of diagnosing this disease by looking at the urine. If ants were attracted to the urine, then the person had this disease. If not, they didn't have. Well, this term Madhumeha was an Indian coined term. Similar term have been adopted in multiple cultures. For example, if we look into ancient literatures of Korean, Chinese and Japanese culture, the word diabetes, which is in English, have their local names which signifies the same problem, that is sugar in urine. Now moving later, it was in almost 2000 years back, Apollonius of Memphis who coined the term diabetes. This person is the bust of this person is very popular. If you type history of diabetes in Google, this picture will pop up invariably. Why? Because he named the disease as diabetes, and it means siphon, that is to drain through, right? He observed that the people, the persons were drinking an amount of water, but the amount of urine they were passing was much more. So this was the start of the disease name of diabetes. Next, Galen of Pergamum. Okay, he was a Greek physician who theorized diabetes as an affliction of kidney. Now here I want to tell you something, that we can see everything in a coherent fashion in a single timeline, but they were pioneers in their own field, because the world was not connected that much. Okay, so whether it was in Egypt in 2500 years back, whether it was in India by Sushruta, whether it was in Apollonius of Memphis, or whether it was in Greek by Galen, they were pioneers in their own right. We have just tied the strings together. So according to him, it was an affliction of the kidneys. In fact, diabetes was thought to be a kidney disease since long. Thereafter, the kidney disease of the kidneys became actually a cause of kidney disease, right? Anyway, so we move along. In 1000 years back, a Persian physician, Avicenna, Okay, he wrote an excellent book in which he identified and described multiple such disease conditions. The book is known as Canon of Medicine. That is the translation, English translation. The nomenclature is Canon of Medicine in 1025. He gave a detailed account of diabetes. Not only he mentioned sugar in urine, but he also identified sexual dysfunction, diabetic gangrene, loss of limb, problem in appetite due to this disease. Moving along, 500 years ago, Swiss physician Philippus Aureolus Paracelsus, okay, he was the first to describe diabetes as a systemic disorder, general systemic disorder. Okay, prior to that it was thought to be an isolated kidney disorder. He was the first in his own region to prescribe or theorize that it is not a disorder of kidneys isolated, it affects the whole body. But it was in 16th century. So we move on to 17th century, where finally the nomenclature was completed by Professor Thomas Willis of Oxford University. He wrote a book which is named as Rational Treatment of Pharmacology, in which he added a term mellitus. The mellitus term in Latin means sweetened by honey. Okay. So, and not only that, he was also the first physician to actually diagnose diabetes by actually testing in urine. Prior to that, only the ancient Indians had the method by looking at the ants. Okay, during all these years, only hypothesized, but it was not diagnosed. He was the first to suggest the diagnosis by testing by testing whether glucose is present in urine or not. At that time, it was sugars. Next, in 18th century, 1788, one of the milestones that I think was very important was by Thomas Crowley. He was again a doctor and a physician. He was the first to theorize the link between diabetes and pancreas. Prior to that, everything was kidneys. Okay. Why he thought to be? Because he found pancreatic stones, calculus, in a patient who died of diabetes. It was not convincing, but it was an early indication that pancreas might have been linked to the disease. In 19th century, in 1862, the landmark milestone was suggested by Dr. Frederick Pavy. He had a large cohort of diabetic patients, and he conducted many experiments, and he was the one who actually gave us the idea that the amount of glucose in blood or amount of sugar in blood was actually proportional to the amount of glucose that is excreted in urine. So it was a quantitative direct relation. And nowadays we use this principle to test the reducing substances in urine using dipsticks and whatnot, right? So it was a very important discovery. But nothing is more significant in 19th century than the discovery of islet of Langerhans by Paul Langerhans. Mind it, he didn't have any idea what was the function of islet of Langerhans. He just was examining pancreatic section under his microscope, and he discovered small cells that was looking like island. Okay, but definitely we all know islet of Langerhans is a very important telltale component of diabetes. So it was needless to accommodate this milestone in the history of diabetes. Next, Oskar Minkowski, very important. He was the first to actually experimentally prove the theory of Thomas Crowley. How he did it, that is linking of pancreas to diabetes. He actually surgically removed the pancreas of a dog, and it induced diabetes in the subject. Okay, so it helped in understanding the role of pancreas in the disease. We move on to 20th century. Yes, golden days of diabetes are coming, yet to come. Dr. Stanley Rosetta Benedict discovers a new reagent, that is Benedict's reagent, which we use often today in the first years to train the students how to test reducing substances in urine. So that was discovered by him in 1911. And in 1916, Sir Edward Schaefer, in his book The Endocrine Organ, theorized that the islet of Langerhans must secrete some substance that governs the carbohydrate metabolism. It was the first modern day indication of insulin. Mind it, prior to that, nothing was known. It was thought to be disorder of kidney. Some were adapting it was a generalized disorder. Theory of pancreatic linkage was given, and islet of Langerhans was just discovered. He was the one to tie the whole thing together. So some substance was being secreted. So what was that substance? Now let us look back a few years back. Actually, during this period, before this something unknown substance was discovered, what was the modality of treatment? Okay, you can see these are the ones that were actually prescribed for diabetic patients. These are pictures I have taken from the Smithsonian Archive, the old medicine. They have all this. If you're interested, you can go and browse them. So you can see all those are named kidney pills. Okay, they're either tonic for kidneys or nothing related to the modern substance that we are about to find out very soon. Okay, so these are the ones that were being prescribed, and also modified diet, starvation treatment was also common, and that was very scientific, right? So all those changed when in 1921 Sir Frederick Banting discovered that unknown substance and an extract. It was a pancreatic extract, and the dog, the subject, he experimented with so many dogs, and dog 410 was the first to receive the extract. Okay, and he named his extract as iletin, right? His student Charles Best joined his research, and he also helped him in refining the extract from fetal pancreas, and it actually made them to understand that it was very much possible to produce this in cheaply, right? And the depancreatized dogs, they recovered. The blood glucose in them fell down. You see, prior to that, Oscar Minowski showed us that when you depancreatize a dog, the blood glucose level raises higher and higher due to induced diabetes. This was the treatment, right? Minded, the name was still iletin, and this iletin extract was further refined when Dr. James Bertram Collip, so three scientists, we know the name of Banting and Best, but Collip was another contributor who joined the research, and he was the one who actually helped in refining the extract even further. And this extract iletin was first given to a human patient. His name is Leonard Thompson. He was a charity patient of the church, and he actually was treated quite well. He survived for 13 more years. Minded, these were all cases of type 1 diabetes. They would have died much earlier. Earlier diabetes means death sentence, but no longer. He died of pneumonia at the age of 27 years, but he indeed survived his initial type 1 diabetes and its complications back then. Very important, one of the most important publication that is considered one of the most greatest achievements in modern medicine was done by Professor MacLeod. He was the first one to propose the word insulin in his paper, which the title was The Effects Produced on Diabetes by the Extract of Pancreas, to the Association of American Physicians Annual Conference. And it is, as I told you, one of the most important milestones in the history of diabetes mellitus. In the same year, it was not possible for any isolated scientist or pharmacologist to mass produce it, right? So pharmaceutical company took over, and we all know Eli Lilly and company was the one who struck a deal with the University of Toronto, and they helped in mass production of insulin to help the patients and to make it commercially available in the United States. And that commercially available insulin was incorporated, was injected in, the who was treated first, that is Elizabeth Evan Hughes. She was the daughter of the Secretary of State, Charles Evan Hughes. So she was brought in an emaciated condition of type 1 diabetes, right? And she immediately responded to this first batch of insulin that was produced, and she lived what can I say? I won't say decent. She lived her full life. She died at the age of 73. Mind it, life expectancy was not that much back then. People used to die earlier, right? We live much more if we follow a healthy lifestyle, right? So she died in 1981. But of course, over the course of the years, she definitely got improved versions of insulin. She didn't continue to get the first batch, which she got in 1922, right? But just the sound of it sounds so miraculous. So for their work, Banting and MacLeod were awarded the Nobel Prize. Banting shares his with Best, and MacLeod shares his with Collip. Now in 1939, moving along, the AD, American Diabetes Association, was formed, and rapid development took place in the next 20 years. In 1944, insulin syringe was formed. In 1959, finally, the hypothesis of ancient Indian scholars, they were the one, even before Common Era, to identify there are two types of diabetes, two types of this disease, one that happens in childhood, one that happens in adult. But finally, this was only a hypothesis, maybe an observation, but maybe it was written in text also, but scientifically not proved. But in 1959, researchers finally identified two types of disease. One was insulin dependent and one was non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. 10 years later, almost in 1966, the first pancreatic transplant was performed in the University of Manitoba. Discoveries continued to happen. In 1971, the first glucometer patent was done by Anton Herbert Clemens. It was named MS reflectance meter, and this is the technology which helped in development of modern day glucometer. In 1980, biosynthetic insulin was formed again by Lilly. They are the pioneer in insulin. In 1999, scientists conducted the first islet cell transplant, in the University of Alberta, and the procedure came to be known as the Edmonton Protocol. In 2003, we are coming towards the recent advancement. In 2003, finally, the names insulin dependent diabetes mellitus and NIDDM was finally dropped, and type 1 and type 2 were adopted. And in 2007, finally, the World Diabetes Day was started to be celebrated worldwide. Mind it, it was originally founded by the International Diabetes Federation in 1991 as in the honor of Dr. Frederick Banting's birthday. Now, for the sake of history to feel old, I have not included any milestone beyond the foundation of Diabetes Day. We are celebrating Diabetes Day, and it's very much relevant that I stop my history over there, because the last 15 years or 20 years, I would say, the diabetes research has so much exploded that it would not be good to include this whole thing in the single video, which will make it a huge one. And definitely what has happened yesterday is definitely history, but I have tried to keep it simple and short. So in 2007, I stopped my history video right here. If you are interested in more history video, please feel free to get back to me in the comment section. I'll be happy to get back to you with more interesting fact about diabetes. So these are my references. You are more than welcome to explore each and every one of them. They are beautiful articles. I'll see you soon with another video. Till then, bye and take care.